Hello and welcome everybody to According to Andrew number 93, a review of the Seven Deadly Sins, which is an anime that is on Netflix. I know people are against Netflix or whatever. I happen to have it, so it was on there. Decided to check it out, and it's pretty good. So I'm gonna get kind of the bad out of the way. First, there's way too much crying in the show. It's weird. I don't understand it. I'll explain that a little bit more as we go along here. Uh, Meliodas seems to grope people constantly, and apparently that's a joke. That's kind of weird. I don't know why that's a thing and why it's in there. And thirdly, it's not. It's got 5 seasons. I think the fifth one just released, and I was like, oh, I'm sure this is finished now, and it's not. And it kind of wraps things up, but also kind of leaves it on a cliffhanger. And it seems like if you just had like 4 more episodes, it would the frickin' story be done. So that's frustrating. Um, I did look at the manga a little bit, and it looks like they probably just caught up to the manga. So that's probably what happened there. But those are kind of um, the things I was not too pleased about the whole show. But let's talk about what they do right and what is great about the show. So, um, what is great about the show is they do a great job of foreshadowing within the show. Um, they put it in your face, and there's like things. How do I explain this? So they do a good job of like subtle things throughout the show, where they'll hint at stuff, or there'll be like kind of a thing that uh, they kind of establish rules, and then they'll like kind of break a rule somewhere, where it's like here's an inconsistency here, but it's like small things, like this person has white hair and everyone else has black hair, and you're like, what's going on with that? Um, so so it'll be a small inconsistency like that. It's not it's the something you can kind of brush aside, and it's not that big of a deal, but it kind of hints at something else and something bigger is happening. Um, and then they deliver on basically every one of those. I can't think of one that they missed out on. I'm not saying that there aren't any, but it it was pretty good. And the pacing is pretty good. Also, if you just wanted to watch the first season, it you could kind of watch the first season as like a standalone. Everything kind of wraps up there, um, and there's a natural expansion of scope is how they kind of generally take care of the stuff. But it's not like unrewarded. Uh, So they do a good job of not putting any, or if they have Chekhov's guns, there is a payoff for it. There is a reason for that thing being in there. They do a good job there. They do a good job of character developing. Basically, it takes a while for some of the characters, and it can kind of be dragging at certain points. But the um, they do eventually go into basically all the Seven Deadly Sins backstories outside of two so far. That doesn't mean that they won't get to them eventually, but as of right now, they haven't really delved into a couple of them. But they've done like 5 of the 7, so that's really good. Um, they do it. They also have done it in a pretty clever way that doesn't really slow down the story. So a lot of times with character development, you're doing a side tangent thing. You're not really tying it back into the story. But a lot of these kind of things end up tying back into the main story, so that the time that you spend over there doesn't feel wasted, and isn't just kind of a thing of like, oh, here's their backstory kind of thing. It's just not an exposition dump, even though they are kind of showing and stuff like that. Uh, so one of the clever ways that they did this is it usually aligns with relevant plot points, so that the pacing of the show never really slows down. That's basically what I covered. So um, it also hits a good like wish fulfillment thing. Like every one of these characters is like super overpowered, and it's like you never it never feels like they're in really any true danger. Maybe something kind of crazy happens, but then it's like they're just gonna come back and blow this guy up, and it's not even gonna be a big deal. Like they get their head cut off or something like that, and they're like, oh, that's not a big deal. Uh, Things of that nature. And it's kind of that's part of the joy and part of the fun of the show is like the fact that there there's kind of problems, but it's never really going to be a challenge. Now, one of the issues that usually develops with this is like the Dragon Ball Z issue, where it's like, oh, well, now I'm just going to get all this power all of a sudden. But they don't do that generally. Um, I can think of like maybe 1 or 2 instances where that was kind of the case, but generally they kind of set that up beforehand. They they kind of show. they do a lot of that foreshadowing of like, oh, if you do this, or if you hit this, or if you somehow unlock your potential this way, your ability and the amount that of power scaling that you could have is pretty crazy. Or um, if you go, we have to go over here to unlock my true power kind of thing. uh, and so you have these ridiculous leaps in power level, but it's not like unearned to a extent, or it's not at least set up and given some justification. It's not just like, oh, in the middle of the fight, I've yelled more, and all of a sudden I jumped from Super Saiyan 1, which people thought was impossible, to Super Saiyan 5 or some crap. I haven't watched a lot of Dragon Ball Z. I'm just kind of ragging on them. Uh, so you can hate me if you want. But yeah, so that was really good. Um, Everyone's kind of useful. So right in this picture that we got up right now, you got the little pig whose name is Hawk or whatever. He's basically useless, right? And he's the comic relief, and that's kind of his thing is Captain of Scraps Disposal, right? And he's fun. He's a great comic relief character, and he's awesome. But even him has moments where he's actually useful. So like it's it's kind of nice to not have a completely useless like character that's just kind of sitting on the sideline and being like, I want to be helpful, but I can't because I'm worthless. But I'm gonna get in the way and be worse than useless by making it so people have to protect me and being uh basically carry me and protect me excessively and all this stuff. So um there's a lot of here's the thing with this story. There's a lot of people who have gone through a lot, and there's a lot that's kind of happened in trauma and stuff that's happened in their lives. And so there's a certain degree where, some of that like they either get over the trauma or they fix the thing that was causing the trauma, something like that. And so then they get sad and they start weeping. But like, I have a limit, people. Like, they're literally, I think someone is crying in every single episode, and I do not know why. It is pointless. It is so overdone, and I'm not like they don't. And the thing is, there's no like, it's supposed to be a power wish for like it doesn't. Maybe I'm just heartless, but there's no connection to these characters where I'm like, oh, I feel bad, like I actually want to cry. They did do it once, which I will get to. But yeah, it was just kind of weird that they would just kind of do this all the time. Like, it's like, I feel slightly happy, I'm going to cry, I do this, I'm going to cry, kind of thing. Like, some of the characters did make sense, and they did a pretty good job of, like, composing themselves most of the time, and then they kind of broke down once. Meliodas, the main character, being that kind of person. But, um, it's just, like, ridiculous. It's like, to pull yourself together, people. Um, I understand you've been through a lot, but, like, come on. They did a good job where Bond had a small arc of about 2 to 3 episodes. They did actually have a really good. They set up a good like emotional connection, and you actually kind of they did the proper like setup and payoff for this character, and you actually felt connected and could understand um, why Bond would be sad about this character passing and stuff like that, and things of that nature. Um, Another reason that you never freaking cry in this show, not like you should. Um, but like they kind of try to get you to cry, but like you have a hard time kind of buying or believing a lot of it because nobody dies, and like I don't want to really it's not really a spoiler. Like the whole thing is that they're supposed to be overpowered and they can't really be beaten. So that's the thing, fine. But then part of that problem is you kind of destroy your stakes because no like if someone dies, I as a base person, and maybe that's how like modern shows have done stuff is there's no stakes, and when someone dies they always bring them back kind of thing. And so my base assumption is if someone dies in a show that they are going to come back somehow because guess what, they always flip and do. So the power of the actual loss and stuff like that. Like actually I started reading Lord of the Rings recently, and that was one of those things where um you know the that scene in the first movie where Gandalf they lose Gandalf, and it's like a really emotional and powerful scene or whatever. But I had watched like the animated versions that they had made years ago, and so I knew the actual full story, and so I knew he came back. And it's like then you see him die, and it's not nearly as you're like he'll come back. It's not a big deal. Whereas like if he doesn't come back or if you don't know that, like, it's a very kind of gripping scene. So it'd just be nice if shows death meant something. Now, in this kind of show where it's more of a rompy fun, I mean, there's serious elements to it, but like, a lot of it is uh, super OP people fighting each other and being awesome, and that's kind of the show. Death not really meaning anything is fine in this show. It's not really a big deal, and I don't think it takes away from the charm or the greatness that is the show. Oh, one other side note, bad thing. So the way Netflix has it set up in their thing, and they have this whole convoluted mess. So there's 5 seasons, but that's not actually true. There's 4 seasons. Season 2, just skip it. It's just like a 4 episode or like slice of life thing that's in there for no reason, and it's just a massive waste of time. Doesn't really add much. If you want to do like some random side romance type story stuff, or watch Hawk run around the town randomly, then have yourself a ball and watch them and enjoy them. That's fine. I thought they were a massive waste of time. You don't need them for the main story. You can skip them. Also, they have a movie on there as well, and so I was trying to figure out where that fit in. That fits in best after you watch the 3rd season. So you're gonna watch the 1st season. You're gonna skip the 6 episodes or so, 4 to 6 episodes of the 2nd season. You're gonna watch the 3rd season. Then the 3rd season will give you enough context to watch the movie. Then you can watch the 4th season and then the 5th season. Uh, the movie, you can skip the movie. It doesn't really fit in with the plot or stuff like that. It's just kind of like a side thing that happens and doesn't affect any of the main things. So you don't need it for the overall plot of the show. You can completely skip it if you want. Um, Also, another thing that's kind of annoying that people do in the show is like they needlessly fall on their sword kind of stuff. So it's like one thing to take responsibility, but it's like every single person is like, "Oh, this is all my fault. No, it's my fault. No, it's my fault." It's like, dude, get over yourself. Look, all right, stuff happened. People were to blame to a certain amount of like, let's move on kind of thing. And like, there's it gets to a level where it's excessive, and this show kind of goes into that territory quite a bit. Not a ton, like it's not the end of the world. I did really enjoy the show. It was fun. It was uh, action packed, fun. Um, the characters are it's a mainly the story's pretty good. There's a lot of good payoffs within the story. Um, but I would say it's a more character-driven show where the characters are the fun, interesting people that you want to kind of you're cheering for, you're rooting for, and so as the characters are doing well, like you're like, yeah, this is, and so they kind of carry the thing forward, and then but it is a pretty good plot, so the plot really helps it, and it all does tie together pretty well. Um, so there's a lot of good twists, but the twists weren't like a subversion of expectations, but an expansion of scope. So, and they also made sense. So, basically, the first thing comes to an end, and then kind of their expansion of scope is they don't actually get all the sins together by the end of the first one. Spoiler. Um, so it's like, oh, we got to go find the last sin, but then also like, um, this this other thing that they were trying to stop at like um they stopped the bad guy in air quotes, but they kind of didn't because they defeated him, but they didn't recover like a key that the key thing that they needed to recover to prevent him from taking over. So that ends up getting activated. That leads to season 2. Then that kind of takes us through season, or well, I guess it would be 3. Then that takes us like through season 3 and 4 and stuff like that. Like, so, but it's never. I can't think of a time within the show where it felt like things were moving slowly. So, it's got that going for itself. And you can usually with the foreshadowing and stuff like that, you can usually infer stuff that's going on. Like you assume certain people are taken care of or whatever, but then like there's an inconsistency within this. It's like, oh, this person should be dead if this isn't working, kind of thing, and so it's like, oh, well, if that's the case, then this has to be the case, and then you find out later that, oh, yeah, that is true. So, like I said, they do a good job of, if you see an inconsistency, there's usually a payoff for it. So that's really good, and it might be that I was kind of looking for these when I was watching it, but it was really kind of I think if you don't notice them, it's going to be like, oh, cool, look at this kind of twist or surprise reveal kind of thing. And if you are looking forward to them, or you're trying to like figure out what's going on with this, it's really nice to be like, oh, here's the payoff that I was kind of looking for. Here's the thing that kind of answers this nagging question in the back of my mind. So it's rewarding whichever way you kind of prefer to watch the medium. Um, what one of my favorite parts, just kind of a fan thing, is Escanor. He's the big muscular dude with the axe in the photo. Uh, he's the Lion-Son of Pride, and he just the way he talks and like just the way he embodies what is pride when he like makes statements and stuff like that. And it makes personally he's like my favorite character. So absolutely great. Um, the storyline has a great game of betrayal, so that was a good that hit a good check mark. Um, but then like it added another layer to it as well, which was like it was a game of betrayal because he did have like the seeds of that gamma side stuff, but then there was like another twist to it, and then that caused the whole psychological issue and stuff like that. That's kind of a big twist, so I don't really want to ruin the surprise. Their power level thing, they're not like yeah sure they kind of give a justification for the scaling, but like they're not super consistent. Like this little guy is like super hard to beat, and then the next like season it's like oh yeah we're destroying like 5,000 of these guys with like one swing of our axe kind of thing. So the power level scaling kind of works, but it's also kind of wishy washy. But again, it's the wish fulfillment kind of thing. The power wish fulfillment. So like at the end of the day, I kind of give it a wash. Um, So and then yeah, they needed a couple more episodes to wrap it up. It seemed like uh, it looks like the manga is taking it in a little different direction where it's going to take a little bit longer to close things out. So um, I was really taken aback because season I think 1 and 3 and 4 are 24 episodes. And then I expected season 5 to be 24 episodes, and it turns out it's 12 episodes. So I was just watching it, and I was like, all right, cool. We're like halfway through. We got 12 more episodes. No problem. This should wrap up without any issues. And then uh, it ended, and I was not happy. um, so I think another 12, in my opinion, you could wrap up this thing in 12 episodes. Are they going to? Are they going to find a way to keep the story going and expand the scope and all this other stuff? Maybe. Um, I think it's it's pretty good as is, and the current path, what I was reading from the manga, makes sense. They'll probably wrap that stuff up and then they'll close the whole thing down. And I think that's a good spot to end it and clean up the whole thing. So um, I think I'm looking forward to seeing how it ends, and I'm hoping that it gets like the 12 more episodes that it's probably going to need to wrap it up, or however many it's going to take. I can't imagine it's more than 24 at the most. So, but anyway, that's kind of my review of the Seven Deadly Sins. If you want like a fun power fantasy type show with interesting characters that are quirky and a little bit more lighthearted, fun people that are fun to be around. Oh, part of the whole thing is the main character runs a bar and stuff like that, and so it's just everyone's like around having a good time. Um, and it's just kind of a great overall thing. So it's if you want that kind of vibe for a show, I definitely recommend it. If you happen to have Netflix, I don't think it's available anywhere else. Um, so, but anyway, that wraps that up. If you thought this was interesting, like, share, subscribe, do that normal thing. We're on uh, YouTube and BitChute, Podbean. I think I'm on Spotify now, and a couple other of the streaming platforms. Spotify's the big one. I'm trying to get on Apple, but I haven't heard back from them. So anyway, that's all for today, and hopefully you guys have a good day. Goodbye.